heart of Holly Springs, North Carolina, a community known for its suburban tranquility and family-oriented charm, Monica Mynan was a familiar and beloved face. She was the kind of mother who lived for her two young daughters, her days a constant whirlwind of care, laughter, and dedication. Monica possessed a vibrant spirit that seemed to light up any room she entered, a quality that made her an essential part of both her family and her workplace. She was remarkably dependable, the sort of person whose life was a rhythmic pattern of responsibilities, met with a genuine smile. Her co-workers respected her, and her friends adored her, seeing her as a pillar of strength in their social circle. However, beneath this surface of suburban normalcy, a dark and suffocating shadow was growing within the walls of the Mynan household. Her relationship with Brian Mynan had reached a breaking point, deteriorating into a state of constant, heavy tension. Brian was a man whose personality was defined by a profound need for control, a trait that had slowly turned their home into a psychological prison for Monica. The air in their house was often thick with the unspoken words of a looming separation, a reality that Monica was increasingly ready to embrace for the sake of herself and her children. She dreamed of a future defined by peace rather than the manipulative dynamics that had come to define her marriage. But for Brian, the idea of Monica leaving was not just a personal failure. It was a loss of the authority he desperately craved. The transition from a troubled marriage to a missing persons case happened with a chilling silence. It began when Monica failed to show up for work, an event so rare that it immediately sent ripples of concern through her office. When she didn't answer her phone or respond to urgent calls, her colleagues knew something was wrong. But then, the digital facade began. Text messages started appearing from Monica's number, sent to her employer and her family. The messages were brief, claiming that she was feeling unwell or that she was overwhelmed and needed a few days of isolation to recover. To a casual acquaintance, these messages might have seemed like a reasonable explanation for a sudden absence. But to those who truly knew the rhythm of Monica's heart, they were the first signs of a nightmare. Brian was orchestrating an elaborate digital cover-up, using Monica's own device to maintain a ghostly presence in the lives of those who loved her. He wasn't just sending texts. He was actively managing her social media, posting updates on her Facebook profile to create a curated trail of a woman who was simply taking a break. He believed that as long as her digital footprint remained active, no one would look too closely at the physical void she had left behind. But he had underestimated the profound connection between a mother and her child. When Monica's mother received these texts, her heart sank. The words on the screen didn't match the daughter she had raised. The vocabulary was off, the sentence structures were wrong, and the emotional tone was completely hollow. It was as if someone was reading a script written by a total stranger. Before we continue, if you subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. As the days stretched into a week of silence, the suspicion among Monica's family reached a fever pitch. They confronted Brian, demanding to see her, but he remained an island of terrifying calm. He offered smooth, calculated excuses, suggesting that Monica was perhaps going through a crisis or hiding away out of spite. His composure was so absolute that it was almost supernatural, a flat, emotionless mask that deflected every accusation. Eventually, the growing dread became too much to bear, and the local police were contacted to perform a welfare check. When the officers pulled into the driveway of the Mynan home, they expected a frantic household or a scene of obvious chaos. Instead, they were met by Brian, who stood at the door with a chillingly steady gaze. He welcomed them in with a practiced ease, ready to tell a story that would set the stage for a dark revelation. In the suburban streets, the detectives stepped into the Mynan residence, struck by an atmosphere that felt artificial. While Brian spoke with unsettling poise, the investigators noticed inconsistencies that his calm demeanor couldn't hide. His timeline of Monica's departure fluctuated with every repetition. He claimed she had walked out in the dead of night following a minor disagreement, yet her car remained parked in the driveway, and her essential items were still inside. As detectives probed deeper into his narrative, they realized that the vibrant mother described by her family would never have abandoned her children. Yet this fundamental discrepancy was the first significant crack in Brian's mask. Investigators quickly moved to secure warrants for both Monica's and Brian's cellular devices. They uncovered a digital fingerprint of murder. The texts Monica had supposedly sent were actually pinging off the very same cell towers as Brian's own phone. Every message sent to her employer, every reassuring note to her mother, and every update posted to her social media occurred when the two devices were within mere feet of each other. The digital trail led back to Brian. He had been playing both parts of a tragic play, holding two phones and typing out the thoughts of a woman whose voice he had already silenced forever. The investigation then turned inward, focusing on the physical reality of the family home in Holly Springs. On the surface, the house appeared exceptionally tidy, perhaps too clean for a household with two young children. However, forensic experts began to peel back the layers of Brian's cleanup using specialized equipment. Under the glow of high-intensity lights, they discovered the invisible residues of a violent encounter. Traces of blood were found in specific areas where Brian had scrubbed with professional-grade chemicals, attempting to erase the physical evidence of his crime. The efficiency of his cleaning suggested a man who was not acting in a moment of panicked regret, but one who was methodically managing a crime scene to protect his own freedom. The investigation reached a fever pitch. The most devastating evidence was found hidden within Brian's search history. His digital queries served as a chilling roadmap of intent. During Monica's disappearance, he had researched horrifying topics, leaving no room for interpretation. He had looked up how to effectively get rid of a body, the weight capacities of industrial trash containers, and specifically whether a person could be charged with murder if no physical remains were ever recovered. These searches stripped away any lingering doubt about his culpability. It wasn't an outburst. It was a calculated attempt to make a human being vanish forever while evading the consequences of the law. Amidst this discovery was the heartbreaking reality of the two young daughters. They had been present in the house throughout this entire ordeal. As Brian was typing fake messages and scrubbing away the evidence of their mother's death, the girls were just rooms away, living in a house of secrets, and the psychological weight of this realization hung heavy over the investigators. Brian's need for dominance had overridden even the most basic human instinct to protect his children from the horror of their mother's sudden absence. When faced with the weight of this evidence, Brian's story began to shift. The confident man who had greeted the police was replaced by a cornered individual whose lies were failing him. He realized that the missing person narrative was no longer sustainable and transitioned to a claim of a tragic accident. He suggested that her death was an outcome of a domestic argument. But the evidence of his meticulous planning and the cold-blooded impersonation of his victim contradicted every claim of accidental harm. This was the culmination of his domestic control. Brian Moynan saw Monica not as a partner, but as a possession. But as the police prepared to make an arrest, they discovered the specific, gruesome details of how Brian attempted to dispose of the evidence. A revelation so macabre, it left the community in shock. The handcuffs clicked shut around Brian Moynan's wrists, marking the end of a weeks-long charade that had paralyzed Holly Springs with dread. He was officially charged with first-degree murder, a cold classification for a crime that felt infinitely more personal and sinister. As he was led away, the facade of the grieving, confused partner finally dissolved into a sullen, silent indifference. Outside the station, a community that once valued its quiet safety now stood in mourning, grappling with the reality that such a monstrous act could occur behind the closed doors of a seemingly normal suburban home. Monica Mynan, Faith's the vibrant mother whose laugh had once filled the local parks, was now the center of a tragic legal battle that would seek to define the final moments of her life. The courtroom drama that followed was a master class in forensic reconstruction. Prosecutors didn't just present evidence, they told a story of a digital haunting. They displayed side-by-side comparisons of Monica's genuine communication style against the hollow, sterile messages Brian had sent from her phone after her death. The jury watched in stunned silence as technical experts tracked the GPS pings, proving that the two phones, victim and killer, moved in a synchronized dance through the house, while Brian scrubbed the floors and posted to Facebook. It was a mountain of digital evidence so precise, it felt like Monica herself was testifying from beyond the grave. It her own phone acting as a silent witness to her erasure. Perhaps the most gut-wrenching moment of the trial came when Monica's mother took the stand. Her voice, though trembling, carried the weight of a maternal intuition that Brian had failed to account for in his planning. She spoke of the hollow ache she felt when she read those initial texts, knowing instantly that her daughter's soul was missing from the words. She described the agonizing days of being gaslit by a man who looked her in the eye and lied about her daughter's whereabouts, while he knew the terrible truth. Her testimony highlighted a form of psychological torture that extended far beyond the physical act of murder, leaving the courtroom in a state of heavy, somber reflection on the cruelty of Brian's deception and control. Here, when the jury returned with a verdict of guilty, there was no celebration, only a profound sense of exhausted justice. Brian Moynan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that his reign of manipulation was confined to a cell for the rest of his life. However, even with the verdict, a shadow remained over the proceedings. The tragic reality that Monica's remains were never fully recovered haunted the resolution. Brian had been too thorough in his dark calculations, leaving a permanent void where a proper farewell should have been. For her family, there was no grave to visit, only the memories of the woman she was before the darkness took her. In the wake of the tragedy, Monica's legacy began to transform from one of victimhood to one of advocacy. Her story sparked intense conversations about domestic control and the subtle red flags that often precede fatal violence. Local efforts to increase domestic violence awareness and support systems for women in similar situations became her living monument. Meanwhile, her two young daughters were placed in the loving care of their maternal family, shielded from the toxic shadow of their father's crimes. They would grow up knowing their mother not by the way her life ended, but by the fierce love she had for them, a love that Brian could never truly erase or replace. The case of Monica Mynan remains a chilling reminder of the dangers that can hide behind a curated life. It stands as a tribute to the power of a mother's intuition and the pursuit of truth against manipulation. Though the house in Holly Springs is silent, does the lessons from Monica's life and the justice found in her name resonate, offering light in the aftermath of darkness.